Okay, so now what we're going to do is we need to check first if our order and items arrays aren't empty. So if is an empty order and is an empty items, then we're going to execute some code. Okay, first of all, we're going to instantiate a few classes. First one will be object basket equals new basket. Next one will be object catalog equals new catalog. And the third one will be object PayPal equals new PayPal. Now, we haven't got PayPal class created yet. So let's go to our file browser, to our classes folder, and let's create it now. So new file called paypal.php, and we start with opening PHP tag class PayPal. We're going to create a bunch of properties for this class first. So first of all, we're going to create the environment, which will be private environment. And this will equal to sandbox by default. Okay, and next will be URLs. And the first one will be private underscore URL underscore production, which will equal to, I'm going to close the file browser, https://www.paypal.com/cgi-bin/webscr. So this is our production URL. Now the sandbox one will be private underscore URL sandbox equals, and we have between single double quotes, https://www.sandbox.paypal.com/cgi-bin/webscr. So these are our URLs. What Sandbox is? Sandbox is basically a testing environment. If we didn't have Sandbox, obviously you would have to use production environment, in which case every transaction which you would made through the website would charge your card. Obviously Sandbox allows us to create the virtual accounts and use them, just basically testing whether the payments are coming through, whether the IPN goes through, and all sorts of things, which we'll be learning about later on. Basically, we don't have to use our own money to test the application, so that's what the Sandbox allows us to do. Okay, after this one, we are creating the standard URL to be used, basically. So private URL, which we'll be using, and later on you will see what we're going to use it for. Now we will create the CMD underscore CMD, which is transaction type, and we can place here xclick, or which is basically for buy now buttons. Actually, let's put on a new line so that we have description here. Or we can put underscore cart, which is what we're going to be using. It's just basically for basket purposes. So we have private underscore CMD. As you can see, I'm using several different options. And this is because I'm assuming that at some point you might be using the same class which you're creating now for, let's say, buy now buttons. So why to limit yourself, obviously, to just one method if there are other possibilities as well? Let's create it so that you can expand this class later on if needed. So we have private CMD. Then we'll have all products array. So we have private underscore products, and it's an empty array by default. Then we have all input fields array, private underscore fields, again empty array by default. Then we have your PayPal ID, which is basically an email address to which you want to receive your money for the payments. So private underscore business equals, and here we're going to put our email address later on, but for now just simply leave it blank because we haven't created our account yet. So if we scroll up, after the business we will have page style, so / page style. We have private underscore page style equals null by default. Then we will have return URL, so private underscore return. Then we have cancel URL, private underscore cancel, or cancel payment actually. Okay, if we scroll up, after cancel we will have notify URL for IPN, for instant payment notification. So we have private underscore notify underscore URL. Then we have currency code, private underscore currency underscore code, which will be, for me it's going to be GBP, which is British pound sterling. Okay, then we have tax, VAT amount for card purposes, which is what we're going to be using. Let's scroll up a little bit again. Public this time is going to be underscore tax card equals 0 by default. Then we have tax / VAT amount for X click, which will be public underscore tax as well, null by default. We won't be using this one, but as I said, you might be using this at some point with this class. Okay, now we're going to have pre-populating checkout pages. So pre-populating checkout pages, and the values might be address 1, address 2, which isn't required, city, which is required, state, which is required, zip, which is required. If we're providing this information, then we have country, which is required, email as well required, first name, let's put the comma here, first name, which is also required. Then we have last name, which is also required. And obviously this now what these do basically, if we want to send someone to PayPal and we have all his contact details, address and everything, we can put this as well and send it directly to PayPal, so he won't have to retype all this information within the form if they're going to be paying with the credit card, because they're already going to pre-populate the form basically. So let's put the note, because obviously you have to have all required fields filled in, otherwise it won't work. Just so you remember, all these required fields have to be provided. If you miss one of them, it's not going to work. So public populate, and we're going to leave it as an empty array. Okay, if we go further, now we're going to have data received from PayPal. It's going to be private IPN data. This is response from the IPN, and it's going to be an empty array by default as well. Okay, after this we have path to the log file for IPN response. and we have private underscore log file equals null. And now we need the variable to store the result of the response from PayPal, basically when we sending data back. So result of sending data back to post. Okay, and it's going to be private underscore IPN result, and let's leave it like that. Actually, back to post doesn't make sense. Sending data back to PayPal, let's say PayPal after IPN. I think that's a little bit more. That sounds a little bit more reasonable. Okay, so we've got all of our parameters. Let's move to the next video and start with the constructor and all other methods that will be inside of the PayPal class. So now that we have all of our properties, let's create a constructor for this class. So we're going to start with public function underscore underscore construct. Our constructor will take one parameter, which will basically be CMD. By default, we'll assign the value of underscore cart, as this is what we're going to be using. So in other words, if we are calling our new class here, we're creating an instance, we don't have to pass any value to the constructor, as we already have it assigned by default, and this is what we basically want. So first thing will be the URL. This underscore URL, which is where we're going to be sending the visitor, our new client, once they've clicked the button Pay with PayPal, is this underscore environment. If it's equal sandbox, then I'm going to put it on a new line. Then we want the URL to be the URL underscore sandbox. Otherwise, which is a colon, this underscore URL production underscore production, and then semicolon. So depending on what environment we are currently in, it's going to be either sandbox URL or production URL. Okay, then we have this underscore CMD equals our parameter CMD. So if we won't pass anything, it will simply be underscore cart. Then we have this underscore return URL, which is return equals site URL constant, which we have inside of our config file, then dot to concatenate, double quotes or single quotes, / underscore page equals return. So basically, once we've made a payment, everything has been successful, we want the visitor to be redirected to our site to the return page. Then we have this underscore cancel payment equals site underscore URL again, and then we concatenate / page equals cancel. Then we have this underscore notify underscore URL, which will equal site underscore URL dot, and now we will have / page equals IPN for instant payment notification. Then we have this underscore log underscore file equals root path, then ds, then dot log in between the double quotes, then dot ds, which is directory separate, as you may remember, then IPN underscore log. Actually, IPN dot log, let's make it. And then semicolon. So now our constructor is ready. Let's move to the next video, and we're going to have a look at our first method, which we're going to be using inside of the PayPal.php file. The first method which will be used inside of the PayPal.php file, which is inside of our PayPal class, will be called addProduct. So if we scroll down after our constructor, create a few new lines, and if we start with public function addProduct, we will be passing 4 parameters. First one is a number, second one is a name, then we have price. By default we equal this to 0. Then we have quantity by default 1. Okay, now we are going to use switch statement, and we will use a CMD as parameter. So depending whether we are using cart or just add a buy now button, we will execute different functions. So we have case underscore cart, which is what we're going to be using. Then we're going to have case underscore x click. So now inside of our cart, first of all, we will create a variable called ID, and this will contain the number of items inside of the products array. So count this underscore products. But products, if it's 0, then we want this to be 1. So in order to make this happen, we have to add 1 at the end. So every new product added to the array will have the number increased by 1 depending on the number of items inside of this array. So the first one will definitely be 1. Now we add into the products array this underscore products. The first index will be ID, which the first product will have 1, as we've already said. Then we have item underscore number underscore. Then we concatenate this with the ID. So basically item number underscore 1 for this first item. Then we assign the number passed as a parameter to this specific method. Then we have this underscore products. Again, the same ID. And then we have item name underscore, and the same, we concatenate this with the number of the product. This time we pass in the name of the item, which is a second parameter. If we copy this, run typing this all the time. Now we have amount. So amount underscore, make sure that this is the same index. Then we have price. We assign a price to this. If we copy this line again, paste it underneath, instead of amount, this time it's going to be quantity. So we have quantity, and obviously we pass in the quantity parameter. Now, this is for our cart, but if we have a buy now button, then if empty this underscore products, if we scroll up a little bit, and the reason why we're checking if products array is empty is because obviously if it's buy now, you cannot have more than just one product. So if we copy this entire thing from here, apart from the ID, we type, paste it underneath, then we have the ID, which we can remove from this one. It's going to be item number, and it's going to be a number, ID as well. We can remove these. So it's name, amount, and quantity. And we can remove this ID and simply place number 1 here. Oh, actually, we can put 0 for this specific example. Okay, so that's fine. We obviously don't worry about this. It's here if you will ever need it, but we won't be using this in this series of videos. So that's our add product method. So if we go back to our paypal.php, in the next video, we're going to start using this method. Back in our paypal.php, after instantiation of the PayPal class, let's start with the for each statement. And we're going to be looping through items associated with our newly created order. So items as item. Inside of this array, first of all, we need to populate the information about the product. So product variable, and we use object catalog, and the method get product. We are going to pass item product, which is basically the ID of the product itself. Now object PayPal add product, and we are passing item product, which is ID of the product. Then we will have product name, then we have item price, then we have item quantity. If we put them all on a new line, all these parameters, it's gonna look a little bit better. Now we get in from the product array, we only take the name of the product basically, and the rest is taken from the items associated with the order, because obviously order has already been placed. Even if at the same time now, let's say someone has changed the price, we still have to process the order at this price, which has been displayed to the client when they were adding product to the baskets, obviously what's inside of the orders items table. Okay, so now after this for each loop, now that all these items have been added to the PayPal class, we need to also add any taxes. So object PayPal underscore tax card equals object basket underscore VAT, which is basically the total of the VAT for the whole order, basically. Okay, everything's fine here. Okay, and now we need to populate the client details. So populate client details. So object user equals new user class. Now user variable, if we scroll up, we use our object user and get user method to get order client, to get all of his details basically. We also need to get the country of the user, basically the country where user lives. So get user country record. So we start with object country equals new country, and now we have country variable, object country, and the method get country, which we haven't got yet. We need to pass user country. But before we do this, just to make sure that obviously we found the user record, let's make sure that we check if is an empty user, then we process it. If we indent this code, and we're going to continue within this curly braces. Okay, so now let's move to the next video and let's create this get country method. Now let's create our get country method inside of the country class. So if we open our file browser, open a country class, we can close the file browser, and after the first method inside of this class, if we create a new one, public function get country, we pass in the ID of the country, by default null. Now we are checking if is an empty ID. SQL statement which goes like this: select all from countries where ID equals, then single quote dot this db escape, and we pass the ID. Then concatenate with a single quote right at the end, then semicolon after double quotes. Return this db fetch one, and we pass SQL as parameter. We can close our country.php file now, go back to our PayPal class, to our PayPal.php file, and now we are going to pass all of the details of the customer to PayPal class, basically. So pass clients details to the PayPal instance. Okay, so we have object PayPal underscore populate equals array. And now we are going to add them here. Actually, let's move these lines. If I move it up a little bit so you can see a little bit better, we have address 1 will equal user address 1, then comma, address 2 will equal user address 2. Comma again. Then we have city, user city. Sorry, actually it's going to be town we have inside of our table. Then we have state, which will be user county. Then we have zip, which is our user postcode. After this we have country, which will be country code. Then we go to email, which is user email. Then we have first underscore name, which is user first underscore name. And the last one is a last name, which is user last underscore name. Now, as you can see, for the country, we've chosen the country variable, which is basically an array now because we populated all of the columns from this country table assigned to a specific ID of the country. And we are retrieving the code. If we go back to our site, go back to our table countries, you can see we've got name and a code. Browse, and this code is what PayPal accepts basically. So this table is already pre-populated with all these details, so you don't have to be worried about this. It's all going to be working just fine. So if we go back to our file, our populate array is now done. So the last thing we have to do is to redirect client to PayPal. So the last method will be actually echo object PayPal run, and we pass in the order ID as parameter, and that's everything we have to do inside of our paypal.php file. Let's move these brackets here. Okay, so now obviously we need to create this run method. So let's move to the next video and start working on it. Starting where we've left in the last video, we obviously need to create this run method. So let's go to our PayPal class, and after our add product method, let's create a new one. We see a few new lines, and let's start with public function run, and we pass in one parameter, which is basically transaction ID. By default, null. And we check if isn't empty. Let's copy this name because it's pretty long. Transaction ID. Then this add field, and we're going to add custom as first parameter, and then we're going to add transaction ID to it. After this, we return this render. As you can see, we have two methods which we haven't got inside of our PayPal class yet. One is called add field, the other one is called render. Render we will focus on a little bit later on. Let's start with add field. So before our run method, if we create a few new lines as well, and we start typing private function add field, and we're going to pass two parameters. One is name and the second one is value, and we should assign null values to them by default as well. Okay, now we check first if isn't empty name and isn't empty value. Then we want to this fields assigned to the fields array, the new input field. Actually, let's use single quotes because we're going to be using double quotes inside of this statement. So input type hidden, then we have name, which will be basically will be our, let's actually do it like this, name. Then we will have, actually, do you know what, because it's going to be a little bit too long, we're going to field create a variable called field. We can later on concatenate this if we need to. And this is what we're going to do here actually. Field dot equal after the name. Let's create a space there. After the name we'll have value, and the value will be value taken again from a parameter of the specific method, and then we can close the input field itself. And obviously we're now passing this field onto our array. So that's the add field method. Now if we go back to our previous method, the next one was the render one, and this is what we're going to have a look at in the next video. So our render method. So if we copy the name of the method, scroll up right before our run method, and let's create a new one called public function render. Inside of this specific method, we start with the out variable, and we start with the form tag action. We leave blank for now. Then we have method, which will be post. Then we have ID, which will be FRM PayPal. I can see that I've left a space here. We need to remove it. Okay, now we close the opening PHP tag, form tag. Inside of the action, if we do 2 single quotes and 2 dots to concatenate it, and obviously we want to redirect the visitor to our URL page, which has been set in a constructor. Okay, after this we are concatenating it with this get fields. This time it's get fields, so another method which we create right after this one. Then we have out dot equal to concatenate, and we start with input tag type submit value submit, and closing this input tag. Then we have out again. See, we need to close our form, and lastly return out. Okay, so next method is the get fields one, so we'll have a look at this in the next video. So now we're going to be creating get fields method. If we copy the name and paste it right before our render method. The order of these methods obviously doesn't matter, so you can create them wherever you want. Public function get fields. We start with this process fields, another method which we haven't got yet, and now we check if isn't empty this underscore fields array return implode, and just simply the concatenator will be just nothing basically, so the concatenator blank this underscore fields. Okay, so let's create this process fields method now. Let's create it before our get fields method. Actually, I've just realized we've created this one as public. It should be private, as we're not going to be using this outside. We won't be using render outside either, so private method as well. And I think run is called from outside, so let's keep it public. So it's good to keep the scope as it should be. Okay, so we go for private function process fields. Now we start with this standard fields. Another method that one's going to be created in the next video. After this call we have if isn't empty this underscore products array, then for each this underscore products as product, and then another for each loop inside of this one for each product as key equals value, and then we have this add field, and we pass key and value. Now, while we are running for each inside of the for each loop, if we look at the this products array, if we scroll up to the top, where we actually adding these items to the products array using add product method, as you can see, the first thing is just the ID basically, which doesn't tell us much. It's just the order of the item. So let's say first item will have 1, the other one's gonna have the other added product will have 2, and so on. They don't really refer to the product itself at all. So obviously we need to loop through this first to get to these items, and then we loop through them obviously to get these specific values. So that's why we have 2 for each loops. Okay, so we've added all these fields. So obviously at the end we can run another method, this pre-populate. Basically, standard fields will contain all input fields, which are always called whenever we're going to be contacting PayPal. This this section basically will add custom fields, and pre-populate will simply populate all the details of the client. So we'll add them to our form as input fields as well. So that's everything in this video. Let's move to the next one and create our standard fields method. Now it's time to create our standard fields method. So if we copy the name, we can create it right above process fields. So a few new lines, and we start with private function standard fields. Standard fields method, as I've mentioned in the previous video, will contain all of the fields that are always required with every call to PayPal, but with the calls which we will be making to PayPal when we are sending our custom basket content. So this add field, and we're adding CMD, and the value will be this underscore CMD. Then we have this add field business, and the value will be this underscore business. As you may remember, we didn't provide any value for our property business yet, but we'll do this later on when we create a Sandbox account, because we need to provide the email address of the business to which the money should be sent, basically for the payment should be sent for the specific transaction. In a production environment, obviously this will be your real PayPal email address. Okay, now we check if this page style doesn't equal null, or we can simply check if it isn't empty, but doesn't equal null will do as well. So this add field page underscore style, and obviously the value of this underscore page underscore style. It's not required field, it's an optional. If you want to format your page nicely with some colors, logos, and so on, then obviously you can create it within the PayPal's control panel, and then obviously assign the name of this theme to the specific variable so that it displays when you go to make a payment on the PayPal site. But I'll show you this as well later on. Then we have this add field return, which is the return URL, this underscore return. Then it's going to be this add field notify URL, which is basically used for our IPN, which is instant payment notification. This underscore notify underscore URL. Then we have this add field cancel underscore payment, which will be this underscore cancel underscore payment. Then we have another one, this add field currency code, which is this underscore currency code. Then we have this add field RM, and we set its value to 2. What this parameter basically does, if it's set to 0, we're using get to send the parameters to PayPal. If it's 1, it uses get, but it doesn't send any parameters to PayPal. And if it's 2, it uses post, which is what we're going to be using, is sending also all of the parameters to PayPal, basically. But you can find it on the website, on the PayPal's website, checking the website payment standard, basically specification. Okay, so we have these ones done, and now we use a switch statement to check what CMD we are currently running, basically whether it's cart or just buy now button. And the first case will be underscore cart, which is what we're going to be using. And inside of this one, we check if this tax cart doesn't equal 0, then this add field, and now for a cart, the variable name is tax underscore cart, and obviously we need to pass the value, this underscore tax cart, and then we also need to this add field, pass another variable called upload with the value of 1. Upload basically says to PayPal that this is the custom third-party shopping cart. Then we have case underscore x click, and for this one we do the same, nearly the same check. If this underscore tax this time doesn't equal 0, then we have this add field tax and this underscore tax as value. Okay, as you can see, for cart we're using tax underscore cart. For buy now buttons we're using tax. So that's all done inside of our standard fields method. Let's move to the next video. So now that we have our standard fields method done, let's move on and create our pre-populate one. So above our process fields method, create a few new lines and start with private function pre-populate. First of all, we need to check if isn't empty this underscore populate. Then for each this underscore populate as key equals value, and we simply add this add field key as first parameter and value as the second. So that's everything inside of our paypal.php class. Our paypal.php file is already completed as well. So let's open our browser and start testing. Obviously we haven't provided the business email address yet, so on PayPal's side we will get an error. But let's give it a try. Refresh the page, summary of our basket. Obviously, you need, if you haven't got any products in the basket and you are not on the order summary, simply go to products, add some products to the basket, click on checkout. If you need to log in, then go to next, and you get to obviously to our order summary page. Now if we click on proceed to PayPal, as you can see we are not redirected anywhere. This status here tell us that we're not redirected anywhere. So if we open the Fireback and select our image here, we can see that the summary table has been replaced with this div with frmpp plus obviously our image. We can see that we also have a database error. There is a database query failed, unknown column products in field list, insert into order items. So this is when we add in actually items to the order items table inside of the order class. So if we go back to our editor, open our orders, where we have add items, insert into products should be product, actually because there's product ID. So if we save the file, go back, refresh the page, and if we hit proceed to PayPal, we must have another error somewhere here. So again, Fireback. Let's have a look at the error. Syntax error expecting in PayPal class online 197. So if we go back, PayPal class 197 if isn't empty. Okay, we didn't add this R here. Okay, so if we save the file now, refresh the page, and hit proceed to PayPal now. Oh, it seems to be working. We are being redirected to PayPal, sandbox.paypal. Obviously, we're getting this error, as I said, because we didn't provide the business email address. So PayPal doesn't know who the payment should be pointed to. So now if we go back, and let's move to the next video. Before we move to the next chapter, I would like to explain you a little bit and show you what is happening behind the scenes here. When we've clicked on the Proceed to PayPal button, if we go to our database, click on the Orders table, and click on the Browse, you can see we've clicked 3 times and the order has been added 3 times here. If we go to Orders Items and click on the Browse button, you can see that we have only Order 2 and Order 3 items. The reason being is because obviously the first arrow was pointing at the arrow inside of the code, which was adding items to this orders items. That's why it wasn't executed. It did add order, but it didn't add order items, obviously. So as you can see, this is what's happening. We first create the order, then we take the ID of the specific order and add items to our order items so that we know which product, what quantity, and obviously what price at the time of the purchase was assigned to the specific product. So that's our database. Now if we go back to the browser, one thing we need to do is if we open, sorry, not this one. If we open our browser, go to our JS folder and open basket.js. If we scroll down to our method, to our function, sorry, which basically is called send to PayPal and sends us basically to PayPal. If we comment the line with this form pay_PayPal submit to make sure that when we click on the button, we're not going to be redirected to PayPal. If we go back to our browser, refresh, and click on proceed to PayPal, I want you to see what is happening actually when we click this button, and obviously everything works without any errors. So our frm_pp div, we have the entire form with all of the information which we are sending to PayPal. So this is what's happening when we call add field method, then it's adding a hidden field with the specific value and the name of the specific field. So this is what's happening actually basically here. So you can see we've got the name of the product, all sorts of things with the prices, quantities as well, quantity for product number 1, quantity for product number 2, and so on. And obviously we also pre-populate the fields for address of the person who's making a purchase, city, state, and so on. Obviously, as you realized, we haven't got a business value here. In other words, we simply can't process this order because PayPal doesn't know where to send this order to, basically where to send the money to, who is the business, which is basically whose website is it coming from, and so on. So let's close our Fireback, go back and uncomment this submit line, save the file, close this one. We can also close paypal.php, and let's move to the next chapter.